We would rather have children that were not as academically superior and children who loved God, that were going to be faithful servants for their entire life. If we have to give up one or the other, we'll give up the education. But in fact, it was the opposite.
Welcome. It's the Colorado Homeschool Podcast, interviewing experts, parents, graduates, all here to help you navigate this incredible journey called homeschooling. And if you're looking for resources, tips, and help, go to CHEC.org. You'll find what you need. In the meantime, subscribe, follow along. Well, hello and welcome. We are so delighted to have you again. We have kind of a fun, different interview today. We're going to talk to Shalyn Roach. She and her husband, Bill, have been married for over 40 years. They have 5 grown kids and 15 grandkids. I'm a little bit jealous because 10 of her grandchildren are like on the same property or really close, like neighbors. My grandkids are 4. I have 4 grandkids and they're like 30 minutes apart away from me, which is way too far in my opinion. So I love that. But what's really fun about Shalyn, she is married to the president of the board for CHEC. So you've been very involved. I know he may have the title, but I know that you have been working in the CHEC world and in the homeschool movement for a long time. Obviously, you raised your children and now you're involved with your grandkids. So she shared a couple fun little tidbits. I love this about you. She said she is right now seeking to figure out which perennial flowers are going to grow best. If you know Colorado gardening, it's so fun. You have to be patient, I think, for gardening in Colorado.
Yes.
At least on
which the deer, the rabbits,
yes,
and the altitude won't kill. So we're working at it.
And hailstorms and
hail. That was a good one this year. Yes, hail.
Yeah, exactly. So awesome. I love that you have that. Well, today we're going to talk about generational input and the Titus 2 model, and how do we embrace that, and how do we seek that out in our lives, and what are some really good practical ways that we can kind of grow from one another. I think it's God's design, right? So first, let's just start by, Shalyn, thanks for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about your homeschool journey and how you, just introduce that to us. Tell us about it.
Sure. My husband and I were living in Ohio, and he was teaching at a Christian school there. Our oldest daughter was getting close to school age, and he said, I think we want to take a different path. And I kind of looked at him with deer in the headlights and said, you're talking about me? I'm not the one with the education degree. Maybe I should work and you should school the kids. And that didn't last long on the table. But, I was a little intimidated. But we started going down this path, moved back to Colorado, which is where I grew up, and started on this journey. And, 2 or 3 weeks into it, I'm like, I'm all in. I love this. I'm enjoying it. So it was exciting. And then we found out about CHEC and got excited about participating because we were sold on the philosophy of it. And so we got involved in working. I worked at the conference, workshop coordinator, and then we became the conference coordinators. I think we were the first couple to do it together. And about that same time, he joined the board and then has been involved on the board and president for a good amount of time, like 30 years. I don't know. I've lost track.
Wow. I love it. I've heard Bill tell the story of him being a teacher and going, wait a minute, what am I doing? I want to take this. And it's so, I love that, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. You guys, I would consider, are some of the pioneers in the homeschool movement. Like how old is your oldest?
I think she is 39. Will be 39 soon.
Exactly. So you've been homeschooling since really around the time that homeschooling became legal in Colorado, and started to across the nation, because it is now in all of the states, but it wasn't at that time. So I love that you still had the same reservations that the moms today are having. Like, whoa, I'm not qualified. Why do we believe that, right? Like some expert needs to raise our kids. We've been so conditioned.
I remember a lady saying to me, well, you've taught them the mother tongue. You've taught them how to go to the bathroom on a toilet. You've taught them to tie your shoes. You just take the next step. And somebody will be there to help you. And there's lots of supplements and curriculum and people around these days. But you can do it. Just, you know your child better than anyone else does. You know their moods. Oh, they must be teething. They're hurt. There's something troubling their heart. You know all those things way more than anyone else.
Right. I love that. I love how simply you put that. Like, well, you just do the next thing. Like sometimes I think we overwhelm ourselves because we're thinking,
Yes.
what about calculus and advanced chemistry? And first of all, not every student needs to learn that. And
Exactly.
second of all, when you get there, you get there. We just borrow
Right.
all this trouble. It's so funny.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's a topic in and of itself, of course.
Right.
But let's talk about the intergenerational thing. So first of all, tell me, Shalyn, did you have a strong Christian heritage or a strong like Titus 2 role model when you were younger?
So I grew up in a Christian home. So in that sense, I don't think it was really stated. My mom was a great support. I went to a Christian school for my entire time, including college. But it wasn't like a person had a name that I connected with. It, a coach in
Okay.
sports, but nothing the same. Like
Not in
I'm
a formal manner is what
Right.
you're saying. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk about how can you, because most of the people listening to this podcast are young homeschool families. They're in the thick of this. And so they're not the grandparent yet. It's really fun. I call it parenting 2.0. So when you get there, it'll be delightful. But for now, what I want to encourage them and give them tools for is how do you invite your grandparents, maybe not your grandparents, but older women, the Titus 2 model, into your life. So let's talk about that. If you're thinking about a young mom, how would you encourage her to approach somebody, whether it be her actual mom or stepmom or another woman from their fellowship that they respect? How would you encourage them to approach somebody to ask for their help or involvement?
I think if you have a good relationship with a mom or a mother-in-law, that's a great source for getting help. They love you deeply. I mean, that's the hope and the prayer. Now, that isn't always ideal for everyone, and sometimes you have to look a little further, and you have a Christian friend, an older lady at church, an aunt, something that maybe is willing to do that. And so I think finding someone who has your core values is the best. Even if it's not family, to have core values that are in harmony is the first thing that you should do. And that's saying you don't want your home discipleship to be a battle zone. You're looking for support and not a fight. And we think of it more than home education. I would use the word home discipleship because it's not just about books for me. In fact, my husband and I felt like at the very beginning when I was a little intimidated that I could actually academically teach phonics. I don't know why in the world I felt so intimidated by that, but I didn't have a degree. So, but we just decided we would rather have children that were not as academically superior and children who loved God, that were going to be faithful servants for their entire life. If we have to give up one or the other, we'll give up the education. But in fact, it was the opposite. We were able to teach our children about the Lord, and the academic portion of it in this model was better achieved than in this big group setting with lots of peers and bad philosophy and all of this. But you want to be in lockstep with someone who is trying to create the same environment as you are. So I would say just walking up to someone that you have a relationship with, hey, I want to homeschool my kids. I'm trying to teach them at home. Is there a way that maybe you could help me? That can be overwhelming to someone who doesn't have
That
maybe
mindset. Yes.
Right. So like,
Right.
what? Are you kidding? What do you think I can do? So I think
That's
sometimes
exactly what I was thinking. That's going to be the reaction. So how are
taking
you?
it
Yeah.
down to bite-sized pieces, being realistic about what you can ask them. What are their skills? What are they strong in? How is it that they are actually helpful? And maybe it's not even communicating the knowledge base. It's supporting you in could you watch my toddlers while I take my child? Or could you just come over and sit with the baby and play blocks with them? Or I don't know. There's so many ways. Look at your overall need and think outside the box. I think that was one of the biggest things that we kind of came to figure out that was helpful. We're not in a box anymore. I don't have to have this big, huge box of curriculum. Curriculum's nice and it's wonderful, but I don't have to do everything on that page, and I don't have to get all the supplies that are on there. I can do it this slightly different way. Well, maybe how you order your day is going to be a little bit different, but you figure out what this person can help you with and how you can communicate together, and then you just do the next thing.
Yeah. I was thinking about, like you originally said, whoa, somebody who's lockstep with you and aligned, and that is maybe not going to always be the case. My family, I'm the first generation believer. So even my parents, I was trying to figure out how I can involve them just because I want to. Does it seem like we just don't live in a world that values the generations? Like, it seems like as people get older, it's okay, put them in a nursing home. They're an inconvenience now. And I don't see that among homeschool families. Like we're cherishing it. And there's so much rich knowledge we can get from the older generation, right? So how do you draw that out? Like with my father, I asked him, it was so silly, but my father was in the military and my kids were a little bit older when we did this, but we did this whole gun safety class where I asked him to come and do it. And he was so honored when I asked him, because I was like, Dad, do you think you could now, again, not a believer and certainly not lockstep with me. Even my family was like, you're doing what? Homeschool? Are you sure? There was definitely that attitude about it. But when I honored him by saying, can you help me with this, Dad? I think this would be really fun. And I'm just thinking, let's just do, 1 hour. And here's all the things that so I really guided him and helped him, but invited him in. And that is what I think would go over well, right? Like, has that ever happened to you? Or you were telling me about some of the ways that you're helping your grown kids because they're now homeschooling. I mean, the generations are continuing. They're in that. And what are some of the ways that they've come to you and said, hey, Mom, or what do they call you? What's your grandma name?
I'm Granny. And I took that name after my mom, who also wanted to be Granny. So we had two Grannies around. She became Granny B because her last name is Bauer, and I became Granny Shea. So the quick version is Granny, but sometimes it's Granny Shea. So yeah, I agree with you about not always being able to be in lockstep. But I think a fundamental thing is you don't want someone who is quietly fighting you and your philosophy when you have turned your children over to them. So that would maybe be a better way to say that. You need to be in agreement that you're going forward with this input from someone else and they're not going to be fighting you. So that would probably be a better way to say it. But yeah, some of the ways that we've done it, of course, I'm super excited about the whole family discipleship model. We've tried to incorporate it in so many different ways of the world. So, I mean, I was pretty quick to the draw. Like, how can I help? I would like you to help. And of course, offering is a huge thing, and they know what I believe because of what we've done. So what can I do? I mean, part of it was just, I read to my kids, my grandkids from,
Yes. As
they
simple as reading. Yeah.
just reading all the
Right.
time with them. And then how else can I help? Well, they were just starting into phonics, so I did an alphabet book. And they would come over and I would find something online. Pinterest is full of ideas of how to make the letter B. And so we would have construction paper and glitter and the wires and, whatever, sequins, much to
Yeah,
let's
those moms,
say,
they're like, ain't nobody got time for that mess.
I
Right.
don't
Thank
bring
you
it
for
home.
taking that.
You can do that, and I'm all about that. So, we only had one disaster, and that was when I tried to do an alphabet book with too many grandchildren around, and one of my granddaughters cut off her bangs,
Oh,
like to about right here. Slip, slip, slip. I mean, it was
she's
like
like, this
25
seems like a
seconds.
good idea. That's
So
cute.
I was deeply apologizing to my daughter, but she was very kind. But things like that. So
Yeah.
then it became, can you help us with writing? Well, yes, they're at a very fundamental level that needs a lot of foundational things, but I do supplemental things like homonyms. How do we spell? Spelling is critical to good writing. And let's talk about all the different words that we can come up with that describes man: cowboy, doctor, child, fireman, policeman, exerciser, just anything that we would just go around the room. They thought that was the greatest game. Now I'm teaching them geography, and we use puzzles, and everybody does a puzzle, and we go around the room and figure out those things. Well, it's now not just about learning too. It's the camaraderie of the cousins getting together, and we're building Team Roach. This is a good thing. We hang together, we work hard, and sometimes I have to say, all right, that's enough. You need to work on loving each other. Okay, let's just pause here, and we're going to work on some character issues. But those are all things that I know that my children are also trying to work on, and I want to support them, not just in the academics. I want to support them in the behavior, the character, their love for God, the verses. Sometimes I'll say, hey, Granny B, she's not well today. She fell. Can we remember to pray for her? And and then we got busy doing something, and my 3-year-old granddaughter says, Granny, we forgot to pray for Granny B. So I said, okay, that's great. So we stopped, and everybody went around the circle and prayed for Granny B, and we got ready to leave, and she said, I think we should pray for Granny B again. So I'm trying to inculcate a lot of different things that are supporting them and how they do it.
You touched on something that I think, you guys, you and your husband are very involved in the CHEC movement. You are very involved in home discipleship, and you probably have very similarly aligned parenting ideologies, etc. But what if for the mom who is homeschooling and she maybe isn't in that role, how do you navigate those conversations about, and I'll be honest, I have 4 grandkids, and there's some things that they do that I'm like, well, I wouldn't do it that way. But I don't want to usurp their authority. I don't want them to feel like I'm coming to, and I really do want to. So what's some advice that you would give for the mom? Like how could she be direct without, I don't know, because I could see this as a pain point where there's going to be, there's something so personal about how you raise your children. So how would you encourage them to approach that conversation?
You're saying you don't want it to be a tug of war with the heart of your child. And, I think that's how you have to kind of think through, what can I release to my parent or this other person? What can I trust them with? This is the heart of and soul of my child. So I want to do what's right by my child, but I also want to incorporate, because I think it's not just about you getting help. When you're also ministering to that older person while they're helping you. in that sense, because we as a society, I think, tend to, okay, you're retired, no, empty nest, and then you're just done. You're done parenting, you're done working, and there's no other
You have no
crossover.
value culturally, right?
And you
Mhm.
right, and you don't
Sad.
have a lot. So I think, just honest conversations that aren't in your face, direct, hurtful, about what you would like to see. I mean, even so small as, hey, we're really having a hard time with this child, and it seems like it gets a lot worse when they have candy and sugar. Would you mind not giving them anything while they're with you, or whatever? We're having some trouble with this child really being mean. If that's a problem, would you mind telling me about it, or whatever? I think communication, humility, not acting like, hey, we chose a better way than you. Like, you did not do right by me, and so I'm going to do better than you. That doesn't fly, and that's not a heart of love, respect, honor for the person that you're asking.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. I'm just thinking about some of the encounters that I've had with my children where I really do want to come along inside. I don't know. Maybe it's not so much the encounters I've had with my children, but it's the horror stories I've heard from friends of like the in-laws. And so I have a son who his bride, I love her, my daughter in love, I like that phrase, but I'm so careful to not come off as that wicked stepmom that is, our mother-in-law, I mean, who is just not getting her back or coming between. And so really trying to encourage that they're the authority. And even when maybe that's how I've handled it, is just trying to ask them, well, what would you like me to do? And for me to try to be humble. But I so desperately wanted it when I was a young mom. I didn't have the training, the biblical training. So my encouragement is to not be afraid to ask, like to seek it, involve them and ask for the things that you want. And I think it's okay. Like you said, I love that you use the glitter, because as a young mom, I detested glitter. It's just lingered forever. You could never get rid of it. Right?
And I think what you were talking about, the in-law relationship, as a mother-in-law, okay, I was trying to define my role based on what I wish I had, not what I did have.
Right.
And so I did ask a ton of questions, and then I wanted to try to assume the best. So, like, if she goes radio silent for a couple days, it's not likely that she's angry with me. She's busy. Or, oh, she's pregnant. That's why she didn't respond to me 2 weeks ago, is because she was running to the bathroom all the time. She was sick as a dog. So those are some of the things that I think, assuming the best, communicating well, as a daughter-in-law to a mother-in-law, it goes both ways. And I think if the daughter-in-law, which would be the parent that we're talking to right now, if that woman can initiate, and she can go and say, I would love your help. Would you be willing to help me? I think there's a much easier buy-in on both parts. Communication, asking, like you said, asking. Don't be afraid to ask, with caveats. Hey, if this doesn't work for you, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and then there's this program called Storyworth. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
So it's a program where you they facilitate getting the history of your loved one. So they email a question and then they write an answer to answer that. And then at the end of it, you get a published book, which I just think it's so fun. But that's what I'm thinking of in this like intergenerational richness. Like, it's so easy to assume
when you're young, I know all this already. I joke because my son, when he was a toddler, his phrase was, I know that already. And just not to be teachable. But that is what I hope that the young moms hear is be teachable and seek that wealth of knowledge, because you have experience. Like Shalyn, you probably have story after story of with 5 kids, some discipline struggles that maybe would be helpful. And it's so hard as an older person to try to push that on a younger person, because they have to desire it and want it, right?
Right.
So that being
Sometimes
teachable.
My kids will go on a vacation, the 2 of them, and I encourage that. Like, how can I help you? Can I take the kids for a while? Please feel free, go on a date night, whatever. And now they feel free to ask. So sometimes they'll be like, we're going to go away for our anniversary. And one time, my son and daughter-in-law had been gone for a while, and my son came in the house when they were back, and he said, so I'm pretty sure you have lots of suggestions on how we can parent better because you've seen it. And I said, actually, I have a greater appreciation for everything that my daughter-in-law does, because I've been doing what she does, and it's different doing it for an afternoon than
right.
it is for 7 days,
Yes.
So actually,
different
I have
at this
a
age too.
appreciation for both of you for what you're doing, especially my daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was good that he's asking for input, and then I knew that was probably his heart, and then I said, okay, well, since you asked, here's a few suggestions, or this is not even how I think you correct it, but this is what I see. And I'm praying that my kids stand on my shoulders and learn from my mistakes and do better. So I'm hoping they're going to be better parents than me. But there is a bit of humble pie eating in that, because then you see them making a choice that's different than you. And it's so easy for Satan to whisper in your ear and go, why aren't they doing it like you did? Do they think you didn't do it well enough? And then I just got to kick him out. No, I will not think like that. I'm going to assume the best.
Yeah, it is an interesting dynamic just as a grandparent. I have felt that too. Like, yeah, I made some choices, I have my parent failures, but you and I were talking about this ahead of time. A righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up again. Like, we're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be the perfect parent. Your parents weren't perfect. Your kids are not going to be perfect parents, because we live in a fallen world. But our heart is what you just said so beautifully. Like, we want our children to stand on our shoulders. We want them to do better than we did. And what matters, right? And pulling in the foundations of all the generational wisdom that we have available to us. I just am encouraging young families to do it, to embrace that, to look for that, because there is richness in it. And there is this valuing of life that I think is countercultural, right? Just period. Like you said, you're retired, we're done with you. And I think that we have an opportunity to change that and to really invite in that older generation even in just little ways. It doesn't have to be watching the kids for a week. It could be an hour-long class that you do, or encouraging your children to write the letters to the older generation and become pen pals and ask those stories. You don't need a program like Storyworth. Just start asking, Grandma, what was your favorite toy when you were my age? Do you remember it? Who gave it to you? Those kind of things are so sweet and can really strengthen a family, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, do you have any examples of some, because we're talking about the younger girls and the younger generation being teachable. What about this 2-way model? Have you seen that where you've grown, or you've seen because we're supposed to be growing? That's the sanctification process until we're face to face with the Lord. So have you seen this, a 2-way street?
Yes, I think fundamentally, as we were engaging ourselves in home discipleship, we were trying to rethink it across the board, and we were wanting to break this peer dependency where they are only comfortable with someone their age. So we were trying to have our children around people of all ages. I know one time we had an adopted grandma, and she was dying. And my little Megan was 3, 4, something like that. and we went to the hospice to see her, and her, Grandma Patton's children were around, and they said, well, she hasn't spoken to anybody for like a day. It's probably not going to be long. And, Megan was there, Megan and Jen and Heidi, and Meg just kind of crawled up on the bed, and she grabbed Grandma Patton's hand, and she just started stroking it. And Grandma actually opened her eyes and responded to her. So that was so good for Grandma. That was really good for Megan, because she sees death as part of the process, and that it is, sure, it's a little intimidating, but we have a role in that in life. And so this is where it's way more than calculus and English and homonyms. This is what we want our children to be, is engaged in the culture and their world, bringing Christ and hope to everything. My daughters, when they were technically out of school, they were working and helping my son with his business, but there was a lady at church who was really sick, and she had homeschool age children. My daughters would go for like a week at a time, and they would stay there. They would cook. They would help teach the kids, all of that.
That's community. That's the body of Christ coming together. I loved it. I love that.
Yeah, there are just ways where things, where there's opportunities like that. This is going the other way, but we had a friend whose mom died, and she left behind children. And there's no one ever to teach the girls. It's not the children, not even like mom's sick. Mom's just gone. And a lady at our church, she helped school the kids. So there were lots of opportunities for doing that, just reading a book to the children. But I mean, this lady just dug in and did great with teaching them.
I love it. So that is a thank you for this conversation today, Shalyn, because the intergenerational connections, it's more than that. It's the body of Christ, and we are called to dwell together in unity, right? And, I always just picture like this being fit together, because we are all individually, uniquely designed, and it causes some conflict sometimes. I mean, that's what iron sharpening iron is about, it causes sparks, but it's part of the sanctification process. It's part of what gives God glory, because he even says, they will know you're my disciples by your love for one another. And that engagement together is so rich. And I just hope that families would consider this, that they would reach out for different generations and follow your example. Thank you. So as we wrap up our interview today, we love to close every interview with a homeschool tip that you would say was one of the best that you received.
It doesn't just have to do with home education, but being humble, that when we are willing to look at life and say, how can I change? What do you see in my life? How can I do better? God gives grace in those situations. And everybody's home situation is going to be different than mine. And they need God to give them lots of instruction, and we need to be willing to receive it.
Yeah. Oh, man. And so good. And that is the sanctification process, to stay humble and let the Lord continue until we're face to face, right? Walk in grace with others. So many nuggets there. Thank you. Well, Shalyn, we really appreciate you guys taking the time to be on, or you. And thanks for listening with us, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for joining us today. The Colorado Homeschool Podcast is a ministry of Christian home educators of Colorado. We have been motivating parents to disciple the next generation by embracing home discipleship that is Christ-centered, parent-directed, and free from government control. We invite you to join us in this mission. If you want to support homeschooling in Colorado, go to CHEC.org/donate. In the meantime, share this with your friends and make sure you subscribe. That really helps us. Thank you.
Brought to you by thepodcastupload.com, empowering faith-driven voices.